Hello, hello. Welcome back to the second episode of the Full Court Press. I got the amazing Marco Romo with me and the awesome Ariel Latias. I am Gadiel Cartagena. How are we doing tonight, fellas?
We vibing.
We're good. We're good. You should give yourself more credit. You are just as amazing as we are. No doubt.
Well, we'll see about that. We got some hoops to talk though. I think this is. I'm actually really excited for this episode. We got a lot to talk about because we're getting close to the end of the season. Things are starting to come down. You're taking shape of like the contenders, the play-in teams, who's a dark horse, who's a sleeper, and all that good stuff. But Marco, actually, you brought up the brilliant question that we're going to start with today. And there's a in this COVID season, it's very interesting what means the most going into the playoffs, because obviously you see teams like the Heat, like the Celtics, where maybe they're not playing all of their guys on back-to-backs or every night because they want to prioritize health going into the playoffs and then see where their team goes when they're fully healthy. And then there's other teams that are just going for the seeding, they're getting the wins, and they're probably going to be the 4th and 5th seed like the Hawks and the Knicks and whatever. So, Marco, you brought up this question, so I'll start with you. But what is more important in this specific season, given all the circumstances? Is it playoff seeding, or is it going into the playoffs as healthy as possible?
I think there's a different answer. There's a different answer for different teams and to where they are right now. As you mentioned, the Celtics and the Heat, they're in a different position than most other teams are, considering they were like, they just got done finishing playing because they were in the conference finals. And you see the Lakers as well, but the Lakers have had their injury troubles. But I'm sure they would probably lean more towards the health reason. They want everybody. They don't want to push Anthony Davis to be playing already 35 plus minutes. They're going to gradually keep him along. So it's a different answer for different teams. Like, yeah, the Hawks, they pretty much haven't played in a year plus, and the Knicks either. They're all out. They don't care. They've also had very little injury trouble, which helps as well. Teams, it's an interesting dynamic come playoff time. Like, how many teams are going to be looking different? Like, say, the Nuggets. They might be kind of like plodding along here. They've been playing well, actually, recently. So it's a great time for them to play well. But, the Jamal Murray injury, they've been tempered expectations, I would imagine, in Denver. Without Jamal Murray, they don't expect probably to win a championship this year. I mean, it would be great to hear Nikola Jokic put on a 2011 Dirk-like run. That would be just awesome to watch. Just not against the Heat or like 2011. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic in terms of where we're going to be at the end of the season. I think it's a different answer for different teams. If you're more veteran heavy, I imagine you're going to lean towards health, like the Nets, the Lakers, even the Heat, these kind of teams. And in terms of like seeding, I think it matters less if there's not going to be as many fans either. So I imagine they wouldn't care as much about that either. And we're going to see how these teams deal with it in the coming couple of weeks. Who they're going to be playing.
Definitely. Like, it's really interesting to see how teams are taking this approach. Ariel, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Pretty similar to Marco's, frankly. I think that the answer varies depending on the team in question. So for a team like the Lakers, who, had a top 5 NBA record before Bron and AD went down, and they slid, I think they're 5th in the West right now, but they're like comfortably in 5th, right? Like it's, actually they're only 2.5 up on the Mavericks. So maybe I'll walk that back a little bit, though they expect to be getting LeBron back, AD's been back. So for a team like that, I don't think the seeding matters quite as much, just because I think they've got such an overwhelming abundance of talent at the top end of the roster. They're the defending champions. They've proven that they can turn it on when need be. LeBron's done that throughout his career, so I don't worry about them as much. I think they're the favorite in any series in the West, regardless of who they play, regardless if they're the home team or the road team. I'm picking them. So for them, it doesn't matter as much, but like Marco said, for like a younger team or a team that has less experience, playoff experience, it matters more. So for a team like the Knicks, for example, it's extremely important for them to get that 4 seed, because then they'll have, the extra home game, that confidence boost of being a top 4 team and being depending on the matchup, perhaps the favorite, right? So it depends on the team. It matters. I think in the Heat's case, and as well as the Celtics, the matchup is kind of more important. So they need to be healthy. Whether they finish 6, 7, 5 doesn't matter quite as much. I think it matters who are they playing and how healthy are they going into that series.
Yeah, you guys both bring up honestly valid points. Like I agree with everything that both of you guys are saying. It's going to be really interesting to see how the teams that were in the bubble last year approach this and how they ultimately look. Like, can they turn it on when they go into the playoffs? Because like teams, I mean, the Nuggets have been playing well. The Lakers haven't been healthy. The Celtics and the Heat have pretty much just been like limping along this entire season. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a really interesting playoffs to see how the top seeds manage against these teams that might be underwhelming a little bit. But I do want to get into some young players here because the young players in this league are ridiculously talented. I feel like a lot of them don't get enough credit because a lot of the national media coverage is really like to trend towards the superstars and all that good stuff and the players that we love and we know. But at the same time, there's also players that are doing some fantastic things that no one is really talking about outside of their only local market. So let's give some props to some guys. I think the barometer here was under 25. Ariel, we'll start with you. Who's one of the young guys that you want to give credit to around the NBA?
So as far as young guys under 25 who are underappreciated in the media and just aren't talked about enough, I'm going to go with Zion Williamson. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going with Tyrese Halliburton. I do agree, there has been some level of attention drawn to him and rightfully so. So I don't know how much he's really flown under the radar, but he's a really good young player. And I want to talk about him a little bit more. I think that he's very much in the conversation in the top 2, maybe top 3 at the worst in the Rookie of the Year running. He was the 12th overall pick. He's averaging 13, 3, and 5 over a steal a game on 47, 40, and 85 shooting splits, 57% effective field goal percentage, and has a nearly 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Over the last 3 games, he's averaging 18, 4, and 8 with nearly 2 steals per game on 49% from the field. Like he is just came in, he was ready to go from the jump. Really good measurables, solid defender at the guard position, can guard the 1 or the 2 really well. He's long, he's tall. There were some concerns coming into the NBA with regards to his 3-point jump shot because his form is kind of funky, but he's shooting 40% on over 5 attempts per game. So he's put that to rest. Like I said, good defender, elite length at the position, can guard either position. Eventually, he might be able to guard threes in the NBA as well, given that he's so long. So as he grows into his body more, he'll become an even better defender. And I just love the fit next to De'Aaron Fox. I love his progress. And I think that in a redraft, he would go substantially higher than he went. So I'm going to go with Tyrese Halliburton. I've been really impressed with him.
One point to bring up about Tyrese, like he's been insane in fourth quarters. Like his shooting numbers are up there with some of the best in the league, and I was like, "Holy cow!" I did not know he was doing this well. And I actually wrote about Tyrese early in the season and how he's found the perfect marriage with the Sacramento Kings because he wanted to get drafted by the Kings, and that's like a thing you don't hear like a lot of guys in college. They don't want to be drafted by the Kings, and it spoke to me in that he wants to take on that challenge of being the guy that gets them out of the rut that they're in. He wants to be the head, along with De'Aaron Fox, that leads them out of pretty much the media 11th seed that they've been in for the last 10 years. So I love that he took that challenge on. He wants to be that guy. He's already like the perfect connector, like what Nicholas Batum is with the Clippers, but he could be better than what even Batum is. He's the perfect. I mentioned it last week. He's going to be the best 3-and-D wing like in probably 3 years or so. Role player. He may not ever be a superstar kind of guy, but I think he's going to be perfect to fit along De'Aaron Fox. And I love Tyrese Halliburton too.
Yeah, Halliburton definitely, I think, deserves more love in terms of the Rookie of the Year conversation. I feel like Anthony Edwards has had some great games and some great highlights, and then people have just written off Halliburton as kind of that second rookie because he's been fantastic this year, Ariel. He really has. He brought some fantastic points for that. We did get some comments here. I want to get to them. Sup123654 said, guys, if you had to re-sign one, who would it be, Goran or K. Nunn? I think Goran would have to be coming back on the minimum because he really has not been a positive player. So, I mean, if you get Nunn on a value, sure, but I think Nunn is going to take the money that he's deserved, and he's going to go to a different team. Ariel, Marco, any thoughts on that?
I agree
All,
with everything.
yeah, all things equal, I'm taking Kendrick Nunn.
Yeah.
That might upset some people, but all things are not probably going to be equal. So it kind of depends on what the market is and what he gets from an outside team. Like Gad said, I expect that Kendrick Nunn will probably command more on the open market. So you're going to have to weigh that against, the price against the production and all of that stuff.
Okay. I totally agree. I mean, in a vacuum, none, but context, probably Goran will be the most likely that's come back. We did get some comments here.
I want to shout out the comments. Yeah, where they said Moses Brown and
Yes.
Dort. Shout out to them. I love those two. They're one of my favorites. I love how weird that Thunder have been. They're like the under 25 team, pretty much. Like, I love watching Koku. All those guys just try whatever they want out there. It's awesome to watch.
I think they're in a close game against the Celtics tonight. Ariel, is that the game behind you? Is that what it is?
Yeah, OKC is up 4 with 5.5 to go.
Wow. All right. So, I mean, we'll see if they close that out. Also, a shout out to Keldon Johnson. I really like Keldon. Keldon Johnson makes an impact almost everywhere on the floor, and he was not anticipated to be that kind of guy this early on. So I think the Spurs got a pretty good value pick. I think at 29th overall with Keldon. We're going to see him play against the Heat tomorrow. He's a good player. I like Keldon Johnson a lot. He'd be pretty valuable for a lot of different teams. Marco, who is one of the young guys that you are giving props to?
Let me give some props to the second half of Sexland, Darius Garland himself. I think he's gone underrated to what he's done his second year. I think the improvements he's made in terms of ball handling and the pick and roll and the decision making has especially gotten way better. He's still, prone to some turnovers here and there, but he's gotten a lot smarter about how to run the pick and roll and how to be that secondary guy to Colin Sexton. And some nights I can be convinced that he's going to be better than Colin Sexton, but I'll let that wait a couple more years before I go on that train. But yeah, I've loved watching Darius Garland. He's also a pretty okay defender at this point. I think his size is gonna limit him some, but I think he'll be fine enough, especially if they keep Isaac Okoro to cover up a lot of his defensive lapses. But yeah, I've really liked what he's done this year. I think it's really gone under the radar because of how the leap that Colin Sexton took early on in the year, and everybody was, giving him credit, comparing him to, shout out to Tom Ziller, who compared Colin Sexton's jump to Donovan Mitchell, which I really was like, wow. When you looked at the stats, they were very, very similar, and to the way that they run the offenses that they run. And if Darius Garland can be that second piece to Colin Sexton for the rest of 10 years from now, I think Cavs fans are going to be pretty happy about that, especially if Kevin Love's not around. That's for sure. But yeah, I really loved watching him. I think one thing that's gone also under the radar is the way that he seems to get into the paint a lot easier than he did last year. Last year, it seemed a lot harder for him. This year, it pretty much becomes second nature. I think Jackson Frank, who writes for Uprock's Dime, he wrote about just how well he's improved in that spot. I would recommend checking that out. But yeah, shout out to Darius Garland and shout out to Sexland.
Yeah, no, Darius Garland is one of the players that I actually loved going into that draft coming out of Vanderbilt. He was hurt, but his game is just fun to watch. He just manipulates defenders very, very easily. And now the game is slowing down. Oh my gosh, Heat Expert, you just took the words out of my mouth. I am about to gush over OG Ananobi. Let me just say that much. But yeah, no, Darius Garland's been really, really good. I think he honestly might end up becoming maybe not the number one scorer, but the number one usage guy, because Colin Sexton is more of a tunnel vision. I'm getting a bucket. And Darius Garland more of a see the floor. I'm going to create for others as well as get my own stuff. So I love the Darius Garland love. I liked him coming out. I like him with the Cavs. And if he's able to improve, that can at least give the Cavs some semblance of hope, which is something that they really need right now. But I do want to get to my guy, OG Ananobi, because this year, honestly, he has become he was signed to an extension, 4 years, $72 million before the season. And it's one of those contracts where I said, how the hell did Toronto get him to sign the dotted line, right? Because he's a really, really good defender, borderline elite defender. If not there, he's on the trajectory to become one. And now and he can also guard multiple different positions, 2 through 4. I think he's comfortable with doing. And then 1 and 5 is maybe a few possessions here and there. You don't want him doing that the entire game. But he's the ultimate role player at this point. Like he's efficient when he takes his shots. He just takes catch and shoot threes. He's hitting, I think, 40% from three on 40% from three on 6 attempts a game, which is very, very impressive. His field goal percentage is up 5% on drives, on 1.2 more drives a game. So he's adding a little bit more of like attacking bad closeouts and bad rotations a little bit. So he's adding that to his game, up from 48 to 53%. His catch and shoot percentage is up 5% as well, from 38 to 43. So, I mean, 3-and-D is literally his game right now. He's a 79th percentile catch and shoot player in the NBA right now. And I also, like, from what I've seen watching him play, he's understanding more how to get into the frame of vision of the ball handler. Like, if Fred VanVleet's driving, Fred VanVleet cannot see all corners of the court. He's only going to be able to see so much. And Kyle Lowry's sort of the same. So you need to get into the tunnel of vision to be able to get that catch and shoot opportunity where the ball handler and the driver can see you. And OG Ananobi has done a great job of doing that. So I just want to give him props for that. I think in terms of what his contract is and like his value relative to his contract, he can end up becoming like almost a star role player. I kind of want to compare him to Draymond without the passing, where he's just an elite defender and someone that's making an impact efficiently on both ends of the floor. Not a one-for-one comparison, but that type of impact is what he can become. And he's on a good contract right now. And really good teams are born out of having really good contracts. And I think he's one of the reasons why what Toronto is doing right now is going to be more of a reload as opposed to a rebuild. And I mean, I could talk all day about OG Ananobi, but that's my guy. I'm really happy that he's kind of taken another step this year. He's fun to watch. I like watching him play. He plays both ends of the floor.
I'd like to add something on OG Ananobi, actually, because I totally agree with everything you said. I love watching that dude play. He is an elite defender right now. Like right now, he is a top. Let me pose it this way. Are there five? Let me pose it this way. Are there 5 defenders that you prefer all around, perimeter, inside, on a switch, on any given possession, to OG Ananobi right now?
Probably I could. Let's see. Bam,
5.
Ben Simmons, Giannis, AD, Rudy.
That's about. See, Rudy is like spectacular in the paint, right? We went over this in the last episode. In dropping in the paint, he's absolutely a beast, and he shuts that area of the court off. But in space, and when he drops in the pick and roll, you can take advantage of that. If you got point guards who are quick and can get to that, mid-range pull-up jumper, the 3-point pull-up, with OG Ananobi, there's not really any weaknesses. So Marco, would you have 5 guys that you think you'd put ahead of him, or would it be those 4, and then you've got him in your top 5 as well?
With those stipulations, I think I would put him 5 at that spot. And it kind of reminds me of where he is right now is where Kawhi Leonard was around 2014, which is a pretty.
I have that written down.
There you go.
That is the same. Like I have year to year, it is crazy how close their numbers are. And the only difference is Kawhi was one hell of a pull-up shooter, while OG is one hell of a catch-and-shoot shooter. So he's like a role-playing baby Kawhi in that sense.
But he's shown an ability to make more reads off the bounce and just generally understand how to play in space and on offense better this season than he has in the past, right? He's growing as a player. So when you couple that with the fact that I think we all seem to agree that he's at least a top 5 or 6 all-around defender in the league, I actually think there's a little bit more upside than a high-level, star-level role player. I think there might be a little bit more there for him to reach.
It's going to be interesting. I think he probably needs to get a better handle. Which I don't think is too far off. Kawhi never really had a great handle either. So I think that and a dribble drive game, which I wouldn't put it past Toronto to develop that because they're one of the best development staffs in the league.
Yeah, I think what Toronto did with OG and what they've done with a lot of their like rangy, athletic wing sort of body players is what every single team in the league should strive to do. Like when you're drafting a guy that has the physical tools, you don't want to try to put too much on his plate early on. You want to say, okay, this is what you're going to get better at this offseason, and then the next season, and you keep adding bits and pieces to their game to the point where, I mean, they have OG signed to a 4-year, $72 million contract. I would be shocked if he was not close to an all-star level by the end of this contract. Like, he has that much room to grow. And Toronto's doing it the right way. I think what every team should kind of take their model and just look to add bits and pieces to these little balls of, not little, huge balls of clay that they get in the draft, later in the draft. You just get all upside. And if you're able to add bits and pieces every single year, you build a really, really good player, and they've done it time and time again. So I love OG Ananobi. I'm happy for the man. He's good. I'm happy he's healthy. And
This is
Toronto's
a pro.
on the up and up.
This is a pro OG Ananobi show. You've all been put on notice.
Absolutely.
So I wanted him on the Heat if it wasn't Bam.
It's very, very true. Honestly, he would be fun. Imagine him playing with Bam. That would be a beautiful, beautiful thing. I think what the Heat should try to do with KZ is try to just turn him into like a Walmart version of OG and see what happens from there.
Let's not do this, y'all.
Bits and pieces. There's a lot of pieces to add, but yes, KZ, maybe not top 5, but
top 5 on the bench.
Into a rotational player. That's all I want, is him to turn into a rotational player. But I do want to, before we get into the one thing that we like from around the league, I do want to give you another random stat because I just love to sit on NBA.com. Between these 4 players, which is the most efficient post scorer in terms of points per possession? You got Nikola Vucevic in Orlando, not considering his random stat by guy time. It's Gad. Come on, Manny. Be better. Okay, so you got Nikola Vucevic in Orlando, Karl Anthony Towns, Bam Adebayo, and Domantas Sabonis. Who of those 4 would be the most efficient on post-ups?
Domantas Sabonis, by the way. I'm gonna say you're throwing this out there. I'm gonna guess it's Bam.
Okay.
So he's going for the off the board one. I'm gonna go for the low hanging fruit. I'm gonna say Vooch.
Okay. Do you guys want to guess who number 4 is?
Bam.
I'm gonna say actually Vooch, because he's been more of a catch and shoot guy.
That's true. He has expanded his range. That's a very good point.
Well, Vooch in Chicago would actually be number 1 on this list, but he's not. We'll get to him. Number 4 is, you said it's, how do I pronounce the first name again? I don't want to butcher this again.
Just go with his nickname. Just say Domas.
Domas Sabonis. Okay. Domas Sabonis is number 4 at 0.87 points per possession on 4.2 post-ups a game. Number 3 is Karl Anthony Towns at 0.89 points per possession on 5 post-ups a game. Number 2, drum roll, is Nikola Vucevic at 0.9 points per possession on 5.6 post-ups a game. And number 1, Marco, you are correct, Bam Adebayo at 0.92 points per possession on just 2 post-ups a game. So if you're looking at things where Bam can maybe improve, maybe increase the volume in the post a little bit, as opposed to letting some players that are far inferior take far inferior shots. But what do I know? Anyway,
here's another random stat though. Before
hit me.
I'm just gonna give the random stat. This isn't a trip. Did you guys know that Kelly Olynyk is the number 2 in terms of 2-point percentage on 2-point shots behind Rudy Gobert?
I'm not surprised at all. I've been saying how spectacular Kelly Olynyk is as a player. How well-rounded and consistent he is. No, and in jest, of course, I'm surprised. That's shocking.
That's crazy.
He's a really good finisher. I'll give him credit, but his 3-point percentage may not be as good this year, but he's like still an insane rim finisher.
Wow. The Heat could use that right now. But anyways, I did want to do show this number before I get, and I'll start the things that I like with the team that I wanted to talk about because I'm selfish like that. The number 2 overall player in terms of points per possession on post-ups, number 1 is Robin Lopez. I don't really have words for that. Good for you, Robin Lopez. But number 2 is Kawhi freaking Leonard. He's a number 1 forward, and he's number 2 in the NBA at 1.16 points per possession on 3.2 post-ups a game. So he's a post technician. Kawhi's a beast. And that leads me into the team that I feel deserves a little bit more credit right now for the way that they're playing. And that's the Los Angeles Clippers. The Los Angeles Clippers, since they acquired Rajon Rondo, have been number 1 in net rating, number 1 in record with 11 wins and 1 loss. Don't know if that accounts for yesterday's loss against the, I think, Grizzlies. I'm not really sure who they played against, but they lost to somebody, right? They've been number 7 in defensive rating. They've been number 1 in true shooting and effective field goal percentage, number 1 in 3-point field goal percentage, and over the last 12 games, 7 of their 11 players who are averaging 15 minutes or more per game are shooting above 40% from three.
Wow.
And that does not include Kawhi, who's shooting 39.3% from three. So that means Marcus Morris, Luke Kennard, Reggie Jackson, Paul George, Pat Beverly, Terrence Mann, and Nick Batum are all shooting above 40% from three over the last 12 games. This team is getting scary. The Clippers with Rajon Rondo are getting really, really scary. And I'm not going to say that they're going to win it all, but I think if you're looking at in terms of betting, you want to get value on something, they're plus 265 to make it to the finals right now. Not win it, just make it there. So the Clippers look really, really good. It looks like they figured things out. And most of all, they're having fun. Like when you watch the Clippers play, like they have chemistry this year. And that was the one caveat that everyone had for them last year is like, oh, they don't have enough chemistry. So we don't really know if they're going to be able to put it together in the playoffs. They got chemistry this year. They got shooters, so they can beat you in one game with their role players going off from three. And then they can beat you another game with Kawhi getting hot. They can beat you another game with PG getting hot. That's 3 wins in one series right there. It's going to be tough for anybody to beat the Clippers this year.
I'd like to – oh, go ahead, Marco.
I was skeptical about the Rondo thing, but I listened to my guys, Sean Heiken and Eric Gunderson. They talk about this on the Bulls v Blazers podcast. There's the agenda they have for Rajon Rondo. How he just makes every playoff team just better. And I was like skeptical of it. Even last year, watching him on the Lakers, playoff Rondo is a thing. Shout out to national TV Rondo, even national TV against the Heat Rondo, which is even better. But yes, it's real. He does give them another pick and roll ball handler, which they desperately needed. Reggie Jackson, he's not the type of guy you want in a pick and roll situation. Rondo is a lot smarter in terms of decisions he makes. He gets the ball to the shooters in like really great situations as well. That's one thing that's really become underrated. Reggie Jackson's been a really great catch and shoot 3-point shooter, which is insane. At one point, I think he was shooting almost 50% from like catch and shoots, which is like bonkers. That's Duncan Robinson levels. Their shooting has been absolutely bananas. They have a lot of guys who can shoot. They're kind of like the Jazz in terms of they have just a bunch of guys that can shoot. You can't leave them alone. And then you have a guy like Kawhi and Paul George who can break down the defense. They may not break them down in terms of rim pressure, but they force the other team to bring another defender over, which is just going to cause a lot of scrambling situations, which opens up a lot of their offense, which is why they become one of the best offenses in the league. And I think, yes, we need to give them more props. They've been getting more chemistry. They haven't been resting guys as much, which has been a great sign for a lot of Clippers fans who were frustrated about that last year. So, yeah, give props to the Clippers. I got to give them props for the Rondo trade, finally. I'm succumbing to that. The agenda is real.
Rondo, I think another thing that Rondo gives them is Lou Will is a tough shot maker, and he's also not a great defender. And Rajon Rondo is a good shot creator or distributor, should I say? A good shot distributor where he makes looks easier on the role players as opposed to Lou Will, who wasn't really doing that. He was more so just getting his own shot. But if that shot isn't falling and the defense isn't there, congratulations, you've been relegated to Tyler Hero. So that's kind of the things that happen. Ariel, you look like you have something smart to say.
It might not be smart. I don't know. You guys be the judge of that. But I really agree with what both of you have said. I feel like with the Clippers, like the talk about them has been since that roster's been assembled. So about 2 years now that they don't really have a true point guard that gets them into their offense cleanly. So too much of it is on Kawhi and PG's shoulders. And I think Kawhi is a little bit more of a playmaker than Paul George is, though Paul George obviously is supremely talented and can make on the fly reads off the bounce and all of that. But you know what? Like, though it kind of hampered them in last year's playoffs for sure, they can just kind of counter it by running pick and roll all day for Paul George and Kawhi. And those guys are absolutely elite in pick and roll. If you get them in an ISO situation or going downhill off of a screen, especially, they're absolutely deadly. That's the kind of stuff that the kind of offense that playoff basketball frequently devolves into, and that's what it becomes. So I'm also really high on them as well in the West. I don't know if they're my favorite, but they're very high up there. They're really close to the Lakers.
I was hoping I was going to talk you into like completely just flipping the script on what you said in the beginning of the show, but I wasn't able to do it. That's fine. We'll see what happens. It's going to be I think this year we'll get the Battle of LA, and I think it is going to exceed expectation. I think it's going to be one of the best series that we've seen in a long time. I think it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to watch it. And I think the Clippers realistically have a shot. Like, PG's been balling. Another stat, just to throw at you guys because I love stats. PG, over the last 12 games that he's played, last 10 games that he's played, he's averaging 29, 7, and 5. That's since Rondo arrived. And on a team high usage rate of 35.6%.
Wow.
So the ball's been in his hand, and he's delivering. Like, if he can carry that, that's the problem is the playoffs. Can he carry it into the playoffs? Because we've seen that falter a little bit in seasons past. But for some reason, my gut says this year might be a little different. I think the chemistry and the leadership that Rondo brings and all that stuff, it's going to help. But anyways, I've been talking too much. Marco, one thing you like from around the league?
Mine's going to be a little quicker. It's just going to be about one guy, the Wonder Boy, as they call him. Shout out to Luka Doncic is operating in the pick and roll is one of my favorite things to watch. It's absolutely mesmerizing. I was watching that game against the Lakers on Sunday, I believe, or Saturday. He just torched them. He picked them apart. They ran stack pick and rolls, or Spain pick and rolls, if you want to call them. Yes, it is, Ricky. And how he waits for the other team to make the first move. He's never sped up, which is crazy coming from a guy in his third season in the NBA. He's already like Chris Paul levels of patience and pick and rolls. He waits for you to make your first mistake, and then he attacks that. He's gonna pick you apart. There's this one play where Dwight Powell, they ran it almost every time. Dwight Powell was screened for Luka. He wouldn't come off of it, trying to score. Luka would just wait patiently. Dwight Powell would immediately cut to the rim. They'd have JJ Redick actually screen for Dwight. And he'd roll down the rim. It'd be any shooter screening for him. JJ Redick would pop out. And Luka would wait for the defense like so perfectly to where he was going to get a layup or a 3-point shot from his teammates, not just for himself, but for his teammates. And they would get like the cleanest looks off of one of the best defenses in the league, mind you. And even without LeBron James in there, because they had Anthony Davis back, but he was still picking them apart. He was making them look like a high school defense out there. And I just love watching him play in the pick and roll. He's so patient. He never gets sped up, which is so great to watch from a guy who's, 23, 24? I forget how old Luka is.
I think he's 21.
Yeah, I think he's
22.
Yeah,
he's 21.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's even crazier. I want to give a shout out to Luka this week. I love watching him in the pick and roll. It's one of my favorite things. I can't wait to watch him for the rest of his career. And I hope that Dallas surrounds him with a couple more shooters in the future so he can even have more space to work with. It'll be similar to the Luka or the James Harden offense, but a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, I'd say. But I still love watching Harden play sometimes. But, we'll wait and see for that. Eventually, people will start hating Luka, but we're just going to enjoy this while it lasts.
It's very true. Like, at some point, the quote unquote ball hogging and the step back three is going to piss some people off. He is 22 years old, by the way. He turned 22 in February. So, I mean, just another layer of impressiveness to Luka's resume. He's unbelievable. But I do want to ask this question, since we're on the Mavericks. Do you think Kristaps is someone that should be moved? Not that they will. Do you think he's someone that they should try to move off of and get a better number two?
That's kind of hard to answer. I don't personally think he's a number two on a title team, right? So in a vacuum, probably. But if there's a way for them to either manufacture an asset or just, somebody wants to go to Dallas and they can make some sort of move happen. I don't know what their cap sheet looks like, but if in today's NBA, if a star wants to be somewhere, they can make that work. If they can find a way to add a legit number two and slide Kristaps down to being their third offensive option, their third best player, that would be ideal for them and would really make them look like legitimate title contenders for me. So in a vacuum, I guess it sort of depends on what's available to them and whatnot. Yes, they do need a better number two if they want to be a legit title contender. But again, depends on what there is this summer and going forward.
Do you think John Collins, like, would you rather, for that team specifically, I don't think either one is the answer, but do you think John Collins would be a better fit alongside Kristaps?
Oh, alongside.
Or no, alongside like Luka, not Kristaps.
Oh. He'd be Dwight Powell with the jump shot and, better off the dribble abilities, which is not bad for pair with Luka.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need more defense. They just need better defenders, I feel like. Like John Collins he's not a great defender. He's not a bad defender, I wouldn't say. He blocks shots. He can be pretty solid as a help defender and come over from the weak side, deter shots at the rim and whatnot, but he's not a great defender at the moment. He's a very good offensive player, so there's that. I think they need better, perimeter defenders and just some more toughness. I don't want to question their toughness like that. I don't want to make it look, weird or whatnot, but yeah, they need more toughness, I think.
Yeah,
I can agree with that. I think that's fair. You don't think Kristaps is tough after all the fights he's gotten in Latvia?
That's a good point. He's probably built up that toughness. I take everything I said back.
No, but I think the biggest concern, Ricky in the comments also pointing to this, the biggest concern with Kristaps is he's never been healthy, and it always feels like he's battling back from something. And that's, at some point when you're a max contract player, like, those things cannot happen. I understand they're not by choice, but I mean, maybe it's the way he's built. He's built differently, and maybe it's not in a good way. So that could be a little bit troublesome. Ariel, one thing you like from around the association?
Yes, fresh off of our first ever Kristaps Porzingis slander on the show, I'm gonna go with the Bucks and how Bud, Coach Bud, has really worked in some other looks defensively, offensively, and has shown a willingness to experiment more with them this season. Over the last couple of seasons, their offense had kind of become rather predictable, and teams had figured out how to go at them, especially in playoff settings where you can, game plan for a specific team over a 7-game sample. They've experimented with a variety of different things this year. One of the most impactful things has been their willingness to switch more. So I'm going to credit Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer here. I read his power rankings article. It's phenomenal. You should read it. You will learn a lot about every single team. He goes in depth on everyone. So he had a stat that for the first 20 games of the season, the Bucks would switch on 10% of possessions. The next 20 games after that, they switched on 18% of their possessions. And then the last 20 games, they have switched on 24% of their possessions. So it shows that, while it's not necessarily translating to wins at the same rate that it has been over the last couple of seasons, it shows a willingness to change some things up, to try some new things and figure out a different identity going into the playoffs so that things go differently this time around. They've got good to elite defenders across every single position. They can switch everything on the court when Brook Lopez is on the bench. PJ Tucker comes in and they downsize. So Bud's willingness to throw in more defensive looks, like the switch, I think is going to really pay dividends in the playoffs. It's going to be harder to go at them. And it shows a willingness to not be so rigid in the way that he deploys his players, right? And it makes me more optimistic about their playoff prospects overall.
That's very I want to interrupt this, sorry, by the way, to let everybody know that OKC won the game against the Boston Celtics. So between Boston and Miami, they're just tanking it out. But anyways, to your point, I think it's crazy that we're in this season, in this COVID, I guess it's fitting. In this season, the COVID season, where things really don't make that much sense, Mike Budenholzer is the coach that is making adjustments and leading his team to look like an absolute contender. And Eric Spoelstra is the coach that is having his team lose to the Chicago Bulls and the shorthanded Atlanta Hawks because he's unwilling to make adjustments. I think that is like a total microcosm of everything that's been happening this year. It's crazy. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. Fantastic point. The Bucks are good.
One more thing about that. I was watching them earlier. John Schumann actually pointed this out. They've been so experimental with the switching recently that Brook Lopez is even starting to do that a little too liberally. John Schumann even called it bamming on his Twitter timeline, which is, I was like, oh, wow. Now switching easily has become a thing with so synonymous with bam that he's become a verb with it. But yeah, it was interesting to watch. Brook sometimes didn't know whether to switch. There's still some things they're going to probably iron out. Which is a thing that, you didn't expect to see this year, experimenting from the Bucks. But, Bucks fans are happy about that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys think this Bucks team is, different this time around? Like, do you think they actually can avoid that wall being built? And like, I understand Brooklyn's a tough matchup, but Milwaukee might be the toughest matchup for Brooklyn in that sense, because they have the defenders to match up and they have the inside presence that Brooklyn cannot stop.
They're different in that this season they have a guy other than, well, I was going to say other than Giannis, but Giannis doesn't really do this very much. Another guy who can break down the defense in one-on-one situations when
Dante DiVincenzo.
Dante DiVincenzo and Pat Connaughton. No, Drew Holiday, man, he changes things significantly for them offensively, right? Like in the playoffs, defenses and schemes are really good and they're keyed in on everything you do offensively. A lot of possessions break down into one-on-one ISO type situations, and Drew Holiday has been spectacular this season. I don't have his ISO points per possession numbers in front of me, but I would imagine they're pretty good. He's been phenomenal for them, and so I think he substantially improves their playoff chances.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything Ariel said there. One thing that they've also have that's they're going to still have to deal with is how often are you going to put the ball in Giannis's hands at the end of every game? Are you going to rely on him because he is your number one, or are you going to be comfortable deferring all those possessions to Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday? It's very similar to what the Sixers are going to have to answer with Ben Simmons about how much do you trust your guys to hold the ball late in games like this, in clutch scenarios, because you need a guy to be a killer late in games. That's going to be the one question I still have my doubts about. But I wouldn't put it past them to go all the way to the finals. But, I need to see it to believe it. The same thing with the Clippers, pretty much. But we'll see.
A Milwaukee Clippers finals would be a truly unbelievable sight to see. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the biggest roadblock for a team like Milwaukee will be playing against a team that has the defensive personnel to stop them. Like Philadelphia, I think Milwaukee would be shaking in their boots because they can lock things down. And to a certain extent, Miami, just because I think Bam, Jimmy, Ariza, Iguodala, those guys can also give Giannis fits. And then if you break things down and you make them more of a one-dimensional team where they're doing pull-up jump shooting, it makes things a lot tougher on Milwaukee. But they look really, really good this year. They look really good. I think this might be one of the years where they have that breakthrough. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It is time to talk about the Heat. It's time for the culture corner. And I don't know how much culture the Miami Heat have been showing recently, but we still are Heat fans at our core. And it's time to talk Heat. And we're in a bit of a predicament. I mean, 3 of the last 3 games that they've dropped have been against the Chicago Bulls without Zach LaVine, the Atlanta Hawks with their G League team. Credit to Bogdanovich and Brandon Goodwin. They played unbelievable that night, and then they did it again against the Bucks, so good for them. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are effectively probably the worst team in the league this year, at least by record standing, close to it at least. What do you think is the biggest single issue? Because there's a lot of things you can point to, but the biggest single issue with the Heat at this juncture in the season?
I'm going to say consistency, and in different ways. It's consistency with the lineup, consistency to what the type of team you're going to be that night. Jimmy Butler said it himself. He doesn't know the type of team you're going to get each night out there. He doesn't know the type of team you're going to get like a half. It's inconsistency with how you're defending these teams. Trevor Ariza was asked about this by Cooper Moorhead, about how teams are adjusting to the mid-game and how that's what's been leading to their better fourth quarters. Like teams have been killing them in the fourth quarter because they've adjusted to what they're getting. Teams are going to adjust to what you're doing throughout a game because they're NBA teams. They're going to know how to attack you. You're going to have to adjust right back. That's been inconsistent as hell. You're searching, but my thing is you're also searching for consistency, and such an inconsistent season in terms of how it's built up. This is just a really trash year for NBA basketball in terms of if you're doing a quick turnaround and you're expecting something more than what you think you're going to get. This season has been pretty unfun in terms of just having to watch the lineups be put out there some nights. It's kind of sucked the fun out of the season for me. It's but you're still at least want the guys to fight out there. And some nights they're not even doing that. And that's what Miami Heat fans expect. You expect to at least have a fight out there. And some nights you don't even see that. Guys are slumping their shoulders and all that. It's very hard for yourself to find consistency when it's eluding you so much. But I don't know if you can blame some of that on the factors around the team as well, which have been pretty, put them up against the wall. And you're going to have to give them a break there, but you still want some fight out there in terms of the type of offense you're running out there that sometimes dies. Like you're running shot clocks down to 2 seconds and you still haven't gotten a great shot because your 50th dribble handoff isn't working. But credit to them, the dribble handoffs have gone down a little bit more. But yeah, it's been the consistency pretty much all year, or the lack of.
That's a fantastic point. Ariel?
I agree with everything Marco said. I am, however, going to go with, just the lack of, or the drop off in production at the guard spot, right? Like Goran, and part of it's due to, health and injuries, right? So Goran's missed some time. Tyler's missed a bunch of games. Duncan isn't the absolute best shooter in the NBA anymore, at least this season in terms of the numbers, right? He's come back down to earth a little bit while still posting an absolutely elite season by normal player standards. When compared to last season, a 4 or whatever it is % drop off in 3-point percentage, coupled with the fact that Goran and Tyler are out, and when they're in, they're kind of just not producing at the same level. The efficiency's gone down for Tyler Hero. He's not knocking down threes at the same clip that he was last year either. Goran's not getting to the rim as much. I don't think he's finishing around the rim quite as well. He seems to have lost a step as well. And it's kind of just, it's putting more of the onus on Bam and Jimmy to have to be spectacular. I don't think that Bam is 100%. I mean, it's pretty obvious. He's not 100% ready to be the takeover lead dog every single night. And Jimmy can only give you so much. Like Jimmy's having a spectacular season and they're just about right over 500. So I think more of it falls on the guards. I think if Goran, Tyler, and Duncan had given us the seasons that we were expecting of them, maybe that's a little bit unrealistic on our end. But if they had done so, I think the Heat would be just fine. I think they'd be a really good team and be a much better offensive team as well.
See, you guys have kind of hinted at what I wanted to bring up. But Marco, you touched on it the most, I think. And Ariel, by the way, I completely agree with you. Like the guard production, if you want X's and O's wise, point to the single biggest thing, that's probably it, because Jimmy and Bam are still holding their own more often than not. But Marco, you touched on it. The joy has been sucked out of this Heat team, right? At least watching them. And I think it's carrying over onto the court. I think the expectations and the pressure of all the weird different circumstances. They started out 7-14 because they had COVID and all that stuff, and they didn't have players ready. And then they had pressure. They were stressing to get back to being a 500 team. Then they got there. They got about 2 or 3 games over 500, and then they had Jimmy Butler go down with COVID, and then another thing happened, and another thing happened. And they've been pretty much battling circumstances the entire year, and then it was the trade deadline, that cloud hanging over everybody's head, and they lost like 5 or 6 straight. And then now they are just in a rut. They can't close games. They can't win games that they were supposed to. I think the pressure and the expectations that a lot of us and a lot of the Heat themselves set on certain players is really dragging on these players now. Like Goran, when he's playing out there, it looks like he's stressing because he understands that he might have lost a step and he doesn't think he might be the same player. Tyler Hero is stressing because he's not living up to the expectations that he probably set for himself, and Heat Nation and the Heat probably set for him. Bam looks like he's out there stressing because he is dealing with the expectations of being a max player in the NBA. He's not getting paid that yet, but he has the expectation around him. I think that is a big issue. I think Jimmy Butler at this point is stressing because he's doing everything he can, and it isn't enough. And I think that's starting to stress him out a lot because he's been in this situation before and he's hated it. But I don't know if he wants to believe that is happening to him in Miami. Just the stress of this season, I think, is really, really weighing down on this team. The only way to fix it, I'm still holding out hope. I have no expectations, but I'm holding out hope. I'm holding out hope that they can win games, and winning solves a lot of problems in this league. And if you're able to win games, people start smiling, you start having fun. And if this team can have fun, get healthy, they can still be a factor in the playoffs. But right now, I think the biggest problem for me, at least, is like Marco said, the joy is really just not there. It looks like they're just trying to play up to expectations rather than playing their game, and it sucks. It really sucks, and it's painful to watch. Like, these games have been really, really tough to watch sometimes.
That was all great points, guys. That was awesome.
Ricky's saying he's got bad news. Listen, 0 expectations. 0.
Ricky's not wrong.
I'm all hope. All hope, 0 expectations.
My expectations are down. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think my expectations really went down like 2 games ago.
Against the Hawks?
Now, yeah. Now everything they do from now on will be gravy for me because
yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Expectations. Yeah,
like it sucks. It really sucks that we're at this point with this team. I guess it's kind of like a regression to the mean because the bubble team was so fun to watch every single night. The way they played, how much fun they were having. They set the world on fire, and now this team is.
What a down way to end the episode.
We had. Does anyone have something positive they want to talk about? Because I don't like ending in this fast. We still got a few minutes here.
I do. The playing game is going to be spectacular. The Heat are going to put up a heck of a playing game. It's going to be phenomenal and get us all prepped for that hard-fought playoff series in the first round. So y'all have that to get excited about.
Okay, maybe there something not Heat related though.
No, I'm good. I think we should end with that.
Well, Ariel, if we lose in the play-in and we don't have a good playoff first-round series, we're all blaming you for all that hope. You're manufacturing too much hope right now, but it's fine.
Listen, I'll take it.
All right. Well, I mean, that pretty much concludes. Oh, Manny with hope.
I just wanted to say that the Sixers are overrated.
Hey,
okay, that's a great way to end it. That's a great way to end the episode.
That's a good way to end the episode. We haven't touched on the Sixers much yet, honestly.
That's a preview for next week, I guess.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start talking about the Sixers because they've been really good this year. But we're gonna have to dive into: is it real? Is it fake? Are they going to be this in the playoffs? We'll see. We'll see. Anyways, you guys in the comments, thank you for making conversation, supporting, whatever it may be. You guys have been great tonight. Next episode, not really sure exactly what date it is going to be yet, but we definitely will be back. Probably doing these a little bit more often as the playoffs start to pick up and the play-in games and all that good stuff. But shout out to my guys, Marco. I'm trying to point here. Ariel Atias and Marco Romo. You guys are awesome. I love talking hoops with you guys. So we'll be back at some point next week. It's going to be a good time. Any last words for the people?
Appreciate everybody for joining us, man.
Eat local Mexican food.
All right. And make sure to check out the 5 on the Floor podcast for the Miami Heat if they decide to win a game, because hopefully he can start doing that soon.
Peace out.
Are we still here?
Should we keep going?
Good night.